Welcome to the New Social Dialectic podcast. Today we are hosting the Gingerbread Jew, Lord Chungus, and Zero Rules 10. Mostly going to be letting Gingerbread Jew bitch about school.
Well, I thank you for the floor. So I had my second week, technically, of school starting today. All last week, it's syllabus week, a bunch of circle jerk, nobody does anything. But really, so I live in the state of Oklahoma. State of Oklahoma has made it illegal for the schools to mandate masks, okay? And so today, for example, is my last day that I can drop all my classes and get refunded 100% and have no questions asked. All right. But you know what else I got today in my student email? I got something that says that masks are expected to be worn. So
Oh?
what I feel like is going to, I mean, they're not saying must be worn. They're not mandated. They're just expected to be worn. So what I'm fully expecting is, I have two points of contention on this. One, I think that the school is going to try and challenge the state law. I think they're going to try and force a mandate through and take it to the courts to fight the state on this thing. I think they're going to lose ultimately, but frankly, I would not be attending school here if I had to wear a mask. I would take another semester off and wait until they fucking grow the fuck up. So I would not. But today's the last day I can drop classes. So now I have to roll the dice. Either A, I will be persecuted on campus because I won't wear the mask, or B, I can drop all my classes now, save my money, go get a job, and blah, blah, blah.
So 2 points. One, you should genetically be used to being oppressed.
Yeah, no, just because I'm genetically used to it doesn't mean I'm okay with it, you know?
But second point, can you define what you mean by the state losing? Because I know in Indiana, we passed a law that public agencies, which by Indiana law includes publicly funded universities,
and the
could
court
not
wouldn't
mandate masks. Yeah,
and the court wouldn't even hear the case.
Yeah, and the courts before them had mostly sided with the college. And the college was like, yeah, we know we're publicly funded, and the government says that we're publicly funded, which means we're a state agency, but we're not a state agency because we said. So even if it had gone to the Supreme Court, it's not likely an enforcement mechanism would have came up. So without enforcement, even if the college, quote unquote, loses in court, will Oklahoma actually enforce their win? Do you think they would do that?
Well, I do think, but it goes into the second. I do think they would, but it goes into the second point of contention that I have, where even if they do lose, even if they never invoke a mask mandate, every single one of my teachers is fucking terrified of COVID. Okay, they've all got their own bullshit reason, but every single one of them is absolutely terrified. And so I now have to. The follow-up question is: if I don't wear a mask, will my grades suffer because of a perceived difference in the quality of human being that I am made by the teachers? I.e., like, if...
I mean,
go ahead.
Shouldn't.
Yeah, but like that's supposing that teachers are impartial, but the teachers are clearly not. We know that through various surveys, just in regards to their political affiliation, and then they associate now masks with a political affiliation. So now they're going to assume that I'm some like Trump-eaten Republicard, even though that's definitely not what I am. And so now they're going to, and then boom, my A turns into a B, my B turns into a C, and so on and so on.
I mean, that's fair.
I would love for you to be able to prove that in a court of law, because that is a lawsuit, and that's not just that's not just getting your money back. That's also like emotional damages. That's long term.
That's
dollarly damages because of loss of income in the future.
It's a teacher getting fired. It's potentially loss of accreditation. It's a lot of different things. But so what, dude? Like these teachers, that they're young, they don't give a fuck. And proof of that is today. So all last week, one of my classes was online because the teacher, like, he came into contact with somebody that had COVID, so he might have COVID. Oh, so he's got to quarantine, so he's got to teach from home. And then today he comes in, he gives a lecture, and he says, he starts off, kind of being reasonable, in my opinion. He says, we really shouldn't be watching cable news. So he doesn't even mention Fox first. He says like MSNBC, CNN, Fox, and stuff like that. He says, don't watch that. Or I'm sorry, not cable. Yeah, cable. And then he goes on to say that we should be watching CBS NBC, ABC, but he goes one step further. Right. Like, to me, like, just right there, you've already lost all fucking credibility. If you're going to tell me that that CNN is wrong and Fox is wrong, but ABC and NBC are right. Like, that's ridiculous. You should have told him, he should have said, watch C-SPAN. I'd be like, all right, I get it.
You know, I would actually have much more respect for him if he said, I would rather you pay attention to MSNBC and balance it with Fox. Look for the blatantly biased, the ones that own their bias, than
Yeah.
the ones who pretend to be centrist,
And
like CNN, MSN, or ABC, CBS. MSNBC, everyone knows ABC is left. Everyone knows Fox is mostly right, but with a side of corporate whoring. Or rather, the main is corporate whoring with a side of right.
well, he takes it one step further. He takes it one step further. Because he says that the most objective sources of news that we can get, and that he advises each and every single one of us to listen to every single day, are PBS and NPR. So
We are laughing.
What?
So I raised my hand. He never called on me. He said he would, but he never did. And it probably is for my benefit that he never acknowledged my question. But I wanted so badly to ask him if we should Pravda and Al Jazeera and RT and Al Jazeera English and Al Jazeera Plus and the BBC and the CD and the Canadian one, the CBS or whatever it is. It's not CBN, I think it is. Like, should we be watching like exclusively state-sponsored news? Like, what the fuck are you talking about, guy? So, like, that's like, how am I supposed to pass a class where the fucking teacher is religious about NPR?
This man is a clown. That's what he is.
Yeah, I think the
He's still asleep. He's still asleep. That's what it is. The average
he's woke as fuck, bro.
No, I mean no. Okay, most people who are woke are actually still asleep.
Yes,
But
yes.
the average normie thinks that those guys are neutral, whereas anyone on the left sees them as balanced, and anyone on the right sees Fox News as balanced. Yet there's actually evidence that Fox News is far more balanced than the others, but still leans hard right. Well,
Yeah. No, they
lean.
lean hard left until like two of their contributors come on, and it might be that those two contributors are in their primetime slots, Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, but like everybody else, dude. Like,
Tucker Carlson like drags the entire Fox media to the right, and then like Sean Hannity sits directly in the middle of the right wing Overton window, just chilling for the GOP.
Yeah,
it's been a long time since Sean Hannity was a true culture warrior.
And then you have people like Chris Wallace, who's basically a show for the Democrats. Like, that might not be how he presents himself, but actions speak louder than words.
I saw the presidential debates.
Exactly.
That was a fucking public kneecapping attempt if I ever saw one.
And so, like, every single one of our teachers has asked us to wear masks in class, okay? And, I got one guy, one teacher who weighs probably like 500 pounds, okay? And he says...
Fuck him. Don't wear a mask.
He says that he wants us to wear a mask to protect his 4 and his 6-year-old at home who are not vaccinated, okay? I hear that, and I fucking want to just snort. I just want to laugh at him. But if he was honest and frank, and he looked at the class, and he said, hey, guys, I'm morbidly obese, which makes me a high-risk COVID person. Can you please, for my safety, even though I'm vaccinated, can you please, for my safety, wear a mask? I would seriously consider it. But he refuses to acknowledge that it is his life at risk, that is his life that he fears for, and instead he tries to pawn off responsibility on his children, who we all know here have like a 1 in like 300 million or 13 in 70 million chance or something like that.
To give you an exact number, 430 children in the U.S. roughly have died from COVID over the last 18 months, out of over 40 million children in the country.
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly right.
There are far more lethal things for children than COVID.
And so if he was honest and he told me, like, hey, it's because I'm morbidly obese, I know that if I catch COVID, I'm fucked. I'd say
I am fucking dead.
I'd be like, all right, bro. Like, I don't actually want to kill anybody, believe it or not. So, like, I recognize that you are kind of putting yourself at risk by coming out in public in any shape and form. And so, good on you. I'll wear a mask for you. I'd think about it. But you pawn that responsibility off on your children, and it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know.
He's trying to pull at the heartstrings. You're supposed to care about the kids or whatever.
Yeah,
and it's like,
I still recognize though that it is him that needs protecting. So why don't I wear a mask anyways? Like what about that action of him not claiming the responsibility for himself? It makes me be okay with not wearing a mask in front of him.
Well, it's because he's being dishonest.
Yeah, and
Right? You sit there and you're just like, it's because. I mean, all right. This is the way I view it. Right? You sit like if someone sits there and says that to me, and I'm just like, no, you're full of shit. Like we all know he's full of shit. And then you kind of just want to be like, you know what? Just to spite you, I'm not going to wear a mask.
well, I think
Like,
it's
yep, fucked.
I think it's because if I buy into his story, then he is not at risk, right? And I think that like in some sense, I internalize that to rationalize. He doesn't believe he's at risk. I don't. It doesn't really matter what I believe because it's his risk to take. And if he doesn't believe he's at risk via this story, obviously he knows he's at risk. He must know that he's at risk, man. Like this dude walks like a mile an hour.
It like not balances itself out, but it like competes with itself, right? He's vaccinated, so he doesn't believe he's at risk, but he has 2 kids at home that aren't vaccinated who he believes are at risk, which ultimately means he still fundamentally believes he's at risk despite being vaccinated. And I mean, we all know the truth. We all know that apparently vaccinated people are like super infestors. So,
bro, it's just
like
I don't even care what anybody says about anybody anymore. Like whether like it's all a lie, man. I don't know. I know we're boom. This video is now delisted, but
delisted, demonetized, and added to another government watch list.
Well, we were never monetized, bro. Don't
know,
worry
right?
about it.
No, someday if
That
we
will
ever
never
get
be
enough of
monetized.
if we ever get enough of an audience to get monetized, they will go back and look through our content and demonetize old stuff. They will
That's
do that.
fine. That's fine. Well, I mean, if we're doing one a week, I'm sure we'll.
But you know what? To be fair, if we get a big enough viewing in a few years, and it turns out that we're right, we might not get demonetized.
Well, it depends on how long the establishment's willing to fight the truth for.
That's fair.
Because that's what the whole 1984 book is about, right? Is that they're willing to fight the truth until the end.
Well, not even fight it, but manipulate it to the point where they're always right.
Well,
right, in like let's say in 8 years they turn around and they're like, "Yep, we told everyone this wasn't safe," and you're like, "No, you didn't."
And so my other teacher is like some 85 pounds. She's like 5 foot tall. She's vaccinated. She masks. She refuses to become within 6 feet of anybody. And so with her, she says it's because of her 4-year-old kid at home. Same excuse. And like she is probably at risk herself just by virtue of being extremely underweight, and she's like 50 plus. No, that's not true. She can't be 50 plus and have a 4-year-old, right? I don't know how old she is, but she's got gray hair. And
she could be. You never know.
And like, so if she told me, okay, for one, she's going through all of the steps and going through all 3 of those, getting vaccinated, wearing
a mask, still
and social distancing. At least you're consistent, right? At least you're consistent. But it begs the question to me: why is she even teaching this semester if she's so afraid that she's gonna die?
That's a fair question. I actually have nothing for that.
I don't think it's a fear that they're going to die. It's a fear that they're going to suffer, because a common thread among this type of person, whether it's with COVID or any other issue you discuss with them, they demand you suffer because they don't want to suffer, because they're not willing to carry the burden of any amount of suffering to make anybody else's life better. They know people on our side are more willing to do it, so they try to force the issue.
That's fair. They'd rather have you suffer than them suffer.
Yeah, it's not just that. It's that a lot of their worldview centers around the total avoidance of their own personal suffering.
See, I had a much different answer, much more administrative answer. Is that is that she's still teaching because she's protecting her tenure, right?
That too.
That's possible.
So,
I mean,
but at
did
that
the
point, you're putting your
school- Well, all right. So this doubles down on that, right? Did the school? I'm not going to say threatened, but I guess that would be the correct term to use. Did the school threaten that if the teachers don't return this school year, that they could potentially either lose their job or lose their tenure?
like I don't
I mean,
know.
I don't know. I was going to
I'm
say, I don't know if that's something you could possibly.
yeah, I'm
know.
not privy to that kind of communication, but like I imagine that would be a losing position for the school because,
100%, because
but at the
she
same
can
time,
teach from home.
well, it's not even that it's just that they don't have enough teachers already. They just don't, and so if you, it's the same. They don't want to get caught in the same, especially because they're up against the teachers' unions, and they don't want to get caught up in the same trap that all these hospitals are trapped in, where they're fucking firing all their nurses, and then they're like, oh no, we're being overrun with all this stuff.
like-
It's like, well, yeah, you just fucking fired half your staff.
It's like you're already understaffed. Let's fire a bunch of people and be even more understaffed because that fucking makes sense.
So I don't necessarily think that the school did that threat. I do think though that I am unaware of the rules regarding tenure exactly, but I would not be surprised that if you attempt to take a year sabbatical, that it's probably on a case by case basis on whether or not they'd accept you on your return.
Well, she probably could have also taught from home. That's why I suggested that maybe it was on the school's end where they were like, no, you have to come in. But even then, if the school is sending you emails telling you that they expect you to wear a mask and all this shit, I doubt that even happened.
Yeah, the vibe from the school is very Branch Covidian.
So, I mean, it does beg the question of why these teachers are teaching if they're that afraid, like in person, when they could easily teach from home.
I think they want the social credit that the nurses get for them to be able to say, I put myself at risk for the betterment of the children.
I mean, probably. But we all see how well that worked out with nurses.
Yeah, they just started dancing.
Right? And then we're sitting there like, well, if they were better at their job, then this would just be a minor inconvenience, not fucking world ending.
And in regards to putting everything online, like the 500-pound guy, like that's what he has done. That he has put his entire class online. Now he does thankfully still show up to class every single day, and he's not telling you not to show up to class. But he has put 100% of the class material online. So if you never want to go to class, you never have to.
But again, like
if everything was online, I wouldn't be enrolled. It really is that simple.
Well, that also, but I mean, that leads to, the same question, right? If he is that afraid of getting his unvaccinated children sick, which we know is bullshit. It's just he's worried about his own life. Why, if he already has everything already online, why bother having a in-person class?
Well, I do think that at some point they must have agreed to do in-person teaching. And so then they were scheduled as such, and then to revoke. I mean, if you take 60% of the class schedule and put it online, you're going to lose a pretty good chunk of students. They're just not going to do anything at all because it costs the same. It costs the same amount of fucking assload of money,
which is
to
still
go to
bullshit,
school.
by the
Yeah,
way.
it really is. So you're gonna have a lot of people be like, "Yeah, I'm going to college for the social aspect of it, and I that's completely lost with this kind of nonsense." And so they're just gonna drop. They're just gonna drop. Or you're gonna have a bunch of people like me last spring who just like I never dropped the classes, and I mean, don't get me wrong, it's fucking me over, but I just stayed enrolled, and now they claim that I owe them money, and I'm gonna see what I can do about that.
You owe us money. The fuck I do.
Well, it's actually that I owe the VA money, but whatever.
I mean, you could easily argue it. I'm sure it's tough because it is the government. When the government owes you money, you probably won't get it. But if you owe them money, they sure as fuck are.
No, we'll get it. It'll take 20 years, and it'll come in the form of inflation.
Yep. But yeah, no, that's just weird. That's like a weird situation. Like the state isn't mandating masks, and the school's not mandating them, but they expect
no,
you to do it, and now your teachers are kind of, they're not mandate. I mean, they are mandating it because you could be academically punished for not wearing a mask, which is bullshit.
Yeah, it would be bullshit. I do think it would be really tough to prove in a court of law. But I also think that if you could prove it in a court of law, it would be absolutely devastating. And every cause needs a martyr. I'm not necessarily prepared to be a martyr.
But you have that Jew money.
Yeah, yeah, that's me. That big Jew money.
No, this school definitely has its own ass covered in some capacity.
Right, and by the way, it's not that the state isn't mandating masks. It's that the state made it expressly illegal for public institutions to mandate masks. And so that's why I think that the school is gearing up to try and bring that to court.
But you know what? Here's all right, today's your last day to like unenroll, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not lose money.
Yeah.
If the school was going to do that, they should have done it earlier.
No, that's the point, dude. They wait until after.
Oh yeah, because then they have your money. But then you could sit there and argue that they purposely waited to basically steal your money.
Yeah, and that would eventually be resolved with a class action suit.
Our local public schools actually did sort of the same thing. They waited to reinstitute the mask mandate till the day before the school year started, past the enrollment date of every public and private school that is accepted in the state of Indiana.
Brutal.
Yeah, so your choice at that point was either accept the mask or try to fight the mask and use your child as the soldier, which is, especially young children. Yeah.
Well, but see, they're being soldiered against you. It's catch-22.
Yeah, or you just pull your child out of the school and you homeschool, and that's an emergency last-minute homeschooling because you probably don't already have a lesson plan drawn up. You don't have a schedule.
Well, even then, to do that, you need to be what is it? It's got to go through the state, and you have to do a state-approved curriculum and all that.
That sounds like New York gibberish. I
don't know if it's like that everywhere, but I know here, if you're to do it, there's like a state-approved. Because you still have to take the state test here. That's why. So
here in Oklahoma, like last year, Keely started teaching at a charter school, and this charter school, she was getting new students like 2-3 months into the semester, like with barely any time left to do anything. She was still getting new students. So you can freely enroll apparently at this place, and they'll truck you in as best they can. But guess what is happening to this school? They are being sued by the state.
For what?
So for basically the mumbo jumbo is like that they're misspending their money. They got phantom students, basically conning the government for more money than they really should be getting. And like, I can definitely see how that happens because like, she'll have like 35 students, and then like 8 of them will just disappear from her roster one day, and she doesn't know what the fuck happened to them. Like, they would never contact her or anything.
Huh.
And so, and then I imagine, so they get kicked out of the system, and then they re-enroll again, and then I imagine that can create a clerical error, which suggests that you have 2 students instead of just the one.
To answer your question, Harris, about standards, Indiana requires a few things. You have to provide equivalent instruction in the English language. However, the State Board of Education isn't given the authority to define equivalent instruction, nor to approve homeschool programs. They have to teach for the same number of days that school is in session. You have to keep attendance records because the state may ask for them. If they do, you have to provide them.
Yeah, and you have to provide like the fuck is it?
You may be required to furnish the number of children by grade level that you're teaching at home. But there are no mandatory subjects for a homeschool program in Indiana. None. You don't even have to have them take the state testing regimen that we have to take every year until high school.
Lucky.
We have to do that, or the charter school has to do that here.
New York, we have the state mandated test, which fucking blow donkey dick to begin with.
So another thing. Oh, by the way, that the teacher that is talking about NPR and all that jazz, he's an advocate for one of the LGBTQ AIPP plus minus signs on campus. Okay,
Of course he
so
is.
he also wants everybody to wear a mask, and I like if he was straight up and honest with me and said, "I'm sorry, I'm about to deliver another demonetized delisting joke," but if he was straight up and honest with me and just said, "Hey guys, I have HIV, so I'm high risk. Please wear a mask in class," I'd wear the fucking mask, bro.
Tell him to go work in California. He can infect all the students he wants and only ever catch misdemeanors for it.
Yeah,
Right?
dude.
Holy shit.
Shit was fucking hilarious. But so, anyways, he handed out this this thing we're supposed to fill out. We don't got to turn it in anytime soon. A couple months or a couple weeks, he said. But like, so there's a bunch of questions on here. They're all related to political science in some capacity. So why did you choose your major? Well, for me, that answer is because I failed out of my other major, and I like
because
to
I'm not a
argue.
good Jew.
Because I'm just not a good student ultimately. But then so like there's innocuous questions, right? Like what are your personal concerns about politics? Well, that's not necessarily an innocuous question, but I answered it with just violence. Violence is what my personal concern is when it comes to politics. I don't want violence, so that's my main concern. But then it goes down.
That's a fair concern, though. I mean, look at the past year
And see,
how everything
my
escalated.
number one reason for using that as my answer is not because it's the most accurate, even though it is the most accurate. My number one reason for stating it so simply is because I don't want him to be able to identify how I lean politically, because I genuinely worry that it will affect how he grades me. And basically all of these questions, in sum, will give you a pretty decent idea of where somebody lies politically. If anything, and some of the questions give you the opportunity to answer it outright, to just declare it outright. And so now I'm stuck in this fucking place where like I don't like this dude wants everybody to listen to NPR and watch PBS. Okay, obvious, clear bootlicker. If I make it in any way, in any capacity obvious or noticeable that I am at heart an anarchist, obviously I am at odds with the professor, and that is never a good thing. It's never a good place to be unless you're in a philosophy class, in my opinion.
Well, except for maybe in today's day and age.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I've only ever had one philosophy professor. I'm pretty sure he was at the Berkeley riots. I'm pretty sure he was in the Moldy Locks video, and he loved my writing. He gave me A's on everything.
Well, fair enough. So that means he was a good professor. I mean,
yeah, well, or he was just pretty chill, or he never read my shit. He probably never read my shit.
Jesus, this is a lot of words. Shit.
So,
well, I mean, that's kind of why I never went back to school, because I was afraid of all of that. You know, going to school being someone who isn't left-leaning, and, not accidentally, but saying the quote-unquote wrong thing, and then next thing you know, you got like a full classroom of people who are like, I'm gonna beat the fuck out of you, and you're like,
I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about that at all. I took English 101 at an almost entirely Latino school in the Valley with a insane lesbian Thailander, Vietnamese, I don't really know where she was from, lady who was absolutely hates white people beyond anything else, and definitely tried to invoke that hate in class. And I talk back to her all the time. You know why? Because Latinos, they don't really hate white people necessarily. They're just chilling, dude. They're just chilling. And in fact, if you look at the numbers for people who are against CRT, Latinos and Asians are over 50% against CRT. So, it doesn't work very well on their cultures.
A chunk of black people are also against CRT.
Yeah, it's like 39% or something like that, but which is still a minority.
It's not a huge number, I know, but I mean, it's better than fucking zero.
It doesn't take a majority. It takes a dedicated and loud minority to do it.
Right. So
if they start showing up to school boards and repeatedly drowning them out with the CRT message, then either the school boards can bend and drop those programs, or they can ignore it in face of the wrath of people just yanking kids en masse from their schools.
Well, I'm sure you guys saw the video of the black father who basically he went off on CRT and he has like 2 doctorates and all that stuff. And
Medical doctorates, actually.
Wait, what?
There were medical degrees.
Yeah.
And wasn't his wife and the mother of his children white as well? So
yeah,
like,
but
they
because of
pointed out,
his rant, or not rant, I should say, because of his argument, the school board's dropping CRT. I saw the article on that yesterday, I think.
Like, that's beautiful, but like, what do any of us have to say when we get up there? Like, hey guys, you know, like, I got out of the army like 6 years ago, and I've done absolutely nothing with my life except for bitch and complain about public policy nonstop.
Hey, speak for yourself. I also made babies.
Yeah,
and
well,
bitch
yeah,
about
but
public
your
policy.
opinion doesn't count because you got kicked out of the army.
They don't have to know that.
Well, they do
Bro,
now.
that's stolen valor, bro.
I mean, to be fair, he got kicked out for like
To be
probably
fair.
the most infantry thing on the planet. So, do we really count that?
No, the most infantry thing in the planet would be that Green Beret who beat a Afghani pedophile to death, who then faced a court-martial for it because that was a Afghani police officer.
Yeah, that one made big news.
That's fair.
But so now, like, I'm in this political science. Like, I kind of knew that it was going to be like this. I thought that it might be a little bit better because it is Oklahoma. But when I was telling Keely about some of this stuff, she was like, "Oh, you should tell one of the other professors. I know there's some right-leaning professors on campus." And she was like, "Oh," I was like, "Okay, well, look them up, and maybe I'll go talk to them." And then she goes to look them up and finds out that all of the right-leaning professors she thought taught at campus don't teach there anymore.
Holy shit!
Did you really think the academia attracts right-wing individuals?
Well,
it really doesn't.
It's very interesting because a part of me thinks that like they got purged. Okay, so that's a thought. I don't know that for any in any capacity, but the other part of me wonders: does Keely just not understand what a right-wing person makes? Like, is she talking really to these like these people who are clearly left-wing, and she thinks to herself like, yeah, this is a really conservative guy?
You know what? To be fair, what was that class? Social
studies, yeah.
Social studies, right? You were able to predict roughly what the class was going to be about, and what the reading material was going to be, and she thought you were being cynical. Right,
and now she won't even let me look at the homework because it is so validating to what I said. She's like embarrassed about it.
So I think it's definitely more along the lines of that she's just disconnected from it, which I mean isn't a bad thing.
It makes me wonder because she grew up. Her dad was a very prominent lawyer. She grew up in Tulsa, relatively conservative city. So it makes me wonder, like, what really is the distinction? Because, like, in California, I know what a liberal makes and what a conservative makes. I know what they're going to look like. I know for sure how they're going to identify and all that jazz. But out here in Oklahoma, like, maybe I'm not so sure. Maybe quote conservative end quote people out here in Oklahoma would be considered, you know, center left in California. But
I mean, it's also possible that they were like true liberals, not like what we see today, where you got leftists running around screaming that they're liberals, and you're like, you're not really.
By true liberals, you mean the kind of people who want the government to allow them to be immoral, and even support tax policy for that, but don't want to force other people to be immoral as well?
He's talking about abortions.
I know what he's talking about.
No, actually, it's not just that. It's abortions, drugs, gay marriage.
Bro, the feds will give me drugs?
Welfare.
How do I get my drugs from the feds, bro?
Be a veteran, claim an injury, go to the VA. I thought you knew this.
No, we're still not allowed to get fucking medical marijuana cards.
Oh, yeah, but we can approve an experimental messenger RNA vaccine within, like,
I won't lie.
a year.
I don't particularly want anything the VA is going to give me. I mean, like, that's not entirely true. I get lots of over-the-counter drugs from them.
They could give you money to go see a real doctor.
Oh, that's true. That's true. In fact, in many cases, they will set you up with 2 appointments where I'm at One is an appointment to try and get in with the Oklahoma City, the big VA in the area, and the other one is a fallback where they say if you can't get an appointment within the next 7 days, like schedule the appointment in 7 days, then we will put you on this other list where you will be contacted by a private physician who will try and get you on their schedule. So yeah,
lucky son of a bitch.
I mean,
I don't have that option.
It hasn't come to pass, but
Oh.
it's there. Oklahoma VA is huge, but it's not busy.
Damn it. I don't have that option here. The only time they ever give us the option to do private care is if they can't do it in-house, which is not often.
Yeah, especially in New York, I'm sure. Now I know. Oh, I totally forgot. Totally lost my train of thought.
But anyway, back to like the school thing. Or with your girlfriend, it could just be I think it's just a disconnect. Like she doesn't really know what one side is over the other.
Yes, it's definitely our most opposite perspectives on life. I am certainly cynical. I'm optimistically cynical, but I'm still cynical. And she is just naive to the bone, to the core.
But it's also possible that she hasn't experienced what we've experienced, right?
Well, I mean, she's not a man, so obviously, we got her there.
Well, even with like the whole, well, no, not even with the whole "my body, my choice" thing, because when they say that, they're like, yeah, it's right, and you're just like, is it though?
Well, it's really interesting because the only political group she will rail against, political demographic, if you will, are the feminists. she does not like the feminists.
They deserve it.
I mean, that's fair though, because at this point, they, the idea that men and women aren't equal.
Definitely, it should be her voicing this. But her main complaint is that it encourages women to basically be whores, and then teaches them to find value in being a whore, and that obviously has no long-term potential.
That's fair. I was going to say now, like the whole feminist, like what is it, third wave, fourth wave feminist?
Third wave feminism.
Oh, yeah. Their whole thing is to no longer be equal, but to be superior.
Well, yeah, dude. The third wave of feminism, the Third Reich of feminism, has to last forever, bro. Obviously.
Like the first wave, they just wanted to participate. Second one, they wanted to be equal. And the third one's like, we own this bitch now.
Right? I want to be everything.
I don't know. I mean, there was some pretty horrific stuff written in the second wave during the 60s and 70s. Like the first time you read that men should be put on leashes and treated like dogs, that's come from the 70s.
I know. It's just that their definition of equal was different from my definition of equal. I'm more worried about political equality in that what negative rights I enjoy, they too get to enjoy. They, on the other hand, have a broader concept of equality.
That's
or
because
positive rights.
Yeah,
it's because they're women.
That's what the difference is negative versus positive rights. It really, like, I was first introduced to this idea like 8 years ago, and it blew my mind. But like you see it everywhere once you identify it. Like the way people perceive the world is totally different if they accept the notion of positive rights versus negative rights.
That's the difference between you and her.
There's lots of differences. I'm 6 foot tall, 6'1".
Oh my fucking god! I'm fucking taller than her, and I'm stronger.
I call her a libtard all the time. She really hates it.
Well, you know what? Is that really a false?
I don't know. I mean, she says that she never voted until she met me. Which, like, I don't know if that's a compliment, because, like, I don't necessarily know what I believe about voting, you know? I'm gonna do it, but is it worthwhile? I don't know.
Well, I'm looking at it from perspective of like your average libtard, right? These are people who hold a quote unquote belief just because it sounds good, not because they actually not because they actually believe in it. Like it boils down to like the whole will you actually die for your cause kind of thing. And I don't think these people would.
So I've always
I think
boiled it.
they would. I think they would. If push came to shove, they would.
Capitulate.
Basically, they would just
Yeah.
roll over and be like, "Okay, I guess this is the way now."
Well, that's a pretty optimistic view. So that's definitely a way to resolve bloodshed. Just stick a gun in their face, and they'll shut the fuck up. You don't gotta shoot them. You just gotta stick the gun in their face.
Right? Just the implied violence. It might be enough to like dissuade them from anything. And I mean, is that optimistic? I mean, sure. It's kind of
I wouldn't say
a weird
sticking a
way
gun
of
in their
optimism.
face. I wouldn't say sticking a gun in their face is implied violence. It's violence. It is the imminent threat of violence.
Hey,
I mean, according to at least
implied.
Indiana state
What-
law,
what if
brandishing
they-
a firearm at someone is considered legally assault unless you have a justifiable reason to do so.
Well, I mean, you kind of do. You're challenging their beliefs. If they're not willing to die for their beliefs, then they don't actually hold those beliefs.
See,
I'm
I've
willing to die
always,
for my beliefs. Are you willing to die for yours?
Right?
I've always boiled it down a little differently.
I was going to say, remember, their beliefs are embedded in a sense of nihilism, the idea that there is nothing after this world. So to them, dying for their beliefs would be the worst way to serve their beliefs.
It's an interesting take on nihilism.
So that's fair.
It might be the best way in their mind to serve their beliefs is to lie to you to then buy themselves time to implement their beliefs. It's better to live on your knees than die on your feet because you can escape chains eventually kind of mentality.
I don't know. Did that work out for the slaves?
Technically, yes. A lot of them did try to escape, but not nearly enough to just jailbreak
they are
on
free
their own.
people now. Also,
yeah, they are free people now.
But they're only a free people because other people fought for their rights.
Some of them tried to fight for their own rights too. I mean, a lot of Union soldiers were black, especially freed slaves. John Brown's army was a thing. There were black people on the Underground Railroad. It's just that it's like a Pareto distribution. You're not going to suddenly get the majority of slaves escaping on their own. If you did, slavery would have ended on its own. It took a small portion, or like only a small portion, was capable of not just escaping slavery.
And it was also a time where technology didn't really exist, and like how many of the slaves even knew that there was a fucking war going on? Right, like I mean, at a certain point they'll all find out, but like how long? There was still Afghans in the mountains who didn't even know that the Soviets had left. But I've always boiled it down to the difference in like if you espouse an idea, a thought, and somebody challenges it in a negative way, and your gut reaction is to just stick with what you initially thought, like disregard the negative thing, then you probably have a positive perspective of the world. But if you have an idea and you put it to thought, and then somebody criticizes it, and you integrate that criticism, and you maybe tweak it a little bit, maybe say, okay, that's a real consequence, but it might be something we have to live with. But if you acknowledge it and accept it, it's probably a negative rights view of the world.
I mean, yeah. It's just in today's day, it's like, right, like you're in, what is that, political science, right? I'm pretty sure if you sat there and had a political debate, you could probably get, I'm going to assume a majority of your class is what I would classify as a libtard. You could probably get them to buckle.
Sure. Well, it's like, I mean, like, that's one way to say it. I think a better way to say it is that I could convince them of the rightness of my perspective.
Well, see, that's the other problem, right? They sit there and they believe they're morally superior to you. So it doesn't matter that you're right, because as long as they still believe that you're morally wrong, they're not going to sway sides. You might be able to sway some of them though, and that that's how debates work. You're not trying to sway the person you're debating, you're trying to sway the people in the crowd who are on the fence.
Sure.
But it does boil down to how they believe at a fundamental level they are morally superior to you, and because you don't believe what you believe in, you're quote unquote evil.
I don't believe what they believe in.
Well, yeah.
I think that the best way to defeat that is to identify their morality on the topic, present them with a very easy to understand false, an actual thing that proves their morality incorrect, and then point it out, challenge them that they have failed to live up to their own moral standard, and it's humiliating for them, and it'll probably push them further down the path that they're going. But as you said, you're not debating. You're not there to change his mind.
It was like with when Trump banned transgenders in the army, and everyone was losing their fucking mind, right? I sat there and pointed out how you're going to put already at-risk people, at-risk of suicide people, in an environment that is already high risk for suicide. And, you're going to sit there and be like, I care about trans people, when in reality you actually don't, because you're trying to put them in a situation that is fundamentally worse for them, to the point that they're just going to kill themselves off.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. You have established their morality that they claim to care about trans people. You have provided them now, like they're complaining about this ban, but you have proven that this ban is actually saving trans lives, and more than just suicide, by the way. Like even like people die in the field all the time. So in more ways than one, you are saving lives, but they are complaining about it, which suggests that their morality is actually to go send trans people to their deaths.
And that's how I got blocked on Facebook.
I mean, are you surprised that a group that is okay with murdering you before you're born and murdering you when you're old and not able to pay taxes anymore would be okay with murdering their most vulnerable supporters to get their way?
Oh no,
No,
absolutely
not at all.
not.
But that's how you defeat the argument. Even though you're not ever trying to change that person's mind, you're trying to like in a classroom scenario, you're trying to change the 29 people in the audience.
Yeah, this goes back to like your 10 rules, right? Oh, well, not your 10 rules, but you know what I mean.
Never surrender the moral high ground.
Yeah.
Number 4.
You're pointing out
how your moral high ground is higher than theirs.
Yeah, exactly. Where their morality is wrong. And how they place this, weird sense of morality in something that just isn't actually morally good.
Plus, by banning trans people from serving the military, you are preventing trans people from participating in the act of colonization. All right, and like, what better blessing can you give a group of people?
I'm not gonna try to argue with someone by claiming that less participation in imperialism is a good thing, because it seems to be their form of cultural imperialism is certainly working for their benefit. Whereas Western imperialism benefited the world to the tunes of what, like a 9% poverty rate around the world now?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been possible without Western imperialism.
Sure, but it doesn't matter because they attack Western imperialism, and so you are mocking them for actually encouraging Western imperialism.
So you're taking their premise and turning it against them.
Exactly, yeah.
Bingo. Their arguments are always very loose, so it's always very frustrating when the Republicans give up the moral high ground, or not even. Well, yeah, no, just really Republicans. Because they sit there and give it up, and you're like, why? Why did you do that?
Because they have no fucking they have no principles. This is why I hate pragmatic.
It's either they have no principles or they have no fucking backbone, and it's like.
Well, I mean, they go hand in hand.
Well, yeah.
You have to have a backbone to have principles.
Or their principles are easily bought and sold.
Which means they're not principles.
Yeah, or they actually have different principles and they're lying to you about them.
Right. Which like violates a principle for me, and suggest that they are not principled in any capacity.
I mean, either is bad. I mean, that's just how it is.
Well, since you mentioned you don't like pragmatism as an ideology, Ethan, might be interested to know, Mr. Steve Dace himself wrote an article a long while back that he frequently brings up called The 7 Deadly Worldviews for the West. And number 5 is pragmatism, a utilitarian ideology that says something can only be true if the practical consequences of accepting it satisfies our needs, wants, and desires. So he describes it as the firstborn child of Darwinism.
Yeah.
Sounds like pragmatism is only valid if you're willing to bend your means of achieving your goal to still achieve your goal. If the thing you want to do to serve your principle doesn't serve it, you do have to be pragmatic about it. But you still have to have that same principle. You still have to be doing that thing to serve that principle.
But yeah, as long as your principle doesn't
Like-
alter.
Like if your principle is, let's say with masking children, if your principle is to produce a healthy and robust crop of future citizens, you have to be willing to honestly and humbly look at the data and figure out what's the best way to prevent COVID infection in children and reduce hospitalization. And you'd have to be willing to admit that you're wrong. That would require some form of pragmatism. But if your ideology is based less on you being right through earning it and then just being, instead of that, you want to be right through force, meaning you want people to acknowledge you as right instead of just actually being correct, you have to be the worst kind of pragmatic.
I don't understand why saying hey, I might be wrong about this makes you pragmatic. I don't understand that connection at all.
Say I don't see that being pragmatic. I see that as being humble. Because at least you have the intellectual capabilities of admitting that you're wrong and being okay with the fact that you were wrong. And you're trying to.
Pragmatism is not reacting to new information. Pragmatism is changing your principles to achieve an end goal. It's okay.
Using the American Heritage Dictionary, the second definition of pragmatism, because the first one's a movement of consisting of varying but associated theories. The second one is a practical, matter-of-fact way of approaching or assessing situations or of solving problems. That sounds like a very boilerplate definition. That sounds like a boilerplate definition of essentially the scientific theory. It's a practical, matter-of-fact way of approaching ideas, theories, or hypotheses, and determining how the world works, solving problems. If your focus is on solving the problem and not solving it this way, you can bend how you do it to still solve the problem. Like, my principle on my issue with drugs is I want people to be able to do the things they want to do without harming other people. If legalizing and regulating it does it best, I'll support that. If criminalizing it heavily does it best, I'll support that. Ultimately, I want fewer people to die of drug overdoses and less drug-related violence.
I want people to die for... I'm just going to leave it there. No.
The Jew wants people to die.
If you
Surprising.
If you make a mistake, if you make a mistake that you had complete control over the entire time, and the societal mores and norms, and you are competing against those societal mores and norms, i.e., the mores and norms are don't do drugs, man, do this drug but don't do that drug, i.e., smoke some pot, fine, cool, but maybe you shouldn't be injecting heroin, right? That's a pretty standard social more in a lot of places. Well, I don't necessarily think that the best way to achieve it is to look at the physical manifestation of it, because when you have the principle of freedom, the people are free to shoot the heroin, whether it's against the societal mores and norms or not. But at the same time, the societal mores and norms do exist. How much time should I spend crying over the dumbass that shot up heroin too much? If my principle is freedom, he definitely has that. He had that right to kill himself that way. Why should I cry about it?
Boils down to how do you... All right, drugs are illegal, right? People are still dying from overdoses. How do you regulate that?
That just because it's illegal, people are going to do it has always been a terrible argument, because you can apply that to any other law. Murder's illegal, people still get murdered.
Well, no. I know that. What I
You
mean
have
is
to balance
I
whether what the cost benefit is of in any approach, and ask if any of them are serving some underlying purpose, underlying
but
principle. If
at
the
the
purpose,
same
it seems like the drug war's purpose is not to reduce drug fatalities or drug violence,
no,
is to
absolutely not.
increase funding for the state. If it's doing that, then it's absolutely winning.
Well, it also comes down to like what Ethan was saying, right? His principle is freedom, right? So people should have the freedom to choose. And, I personally believe in, natural selection. So if someone's fucking dumb enough to overdose when the drugs are legal, I say, fuck it, good riddance. We didn't need them anyway.
Well, I'm not quite that harsh, but I understand why my approach might not be considered empathetic, but I even though nobody used that keyword, I do think that it is the most empathetic approach, because I am putting myself in that guy's shoes where he is choosing to fucking shoot up. And you know what? I hate myself when I think of myself like that. And you know what else? I bet so much money that I don't have that heroin addict also hates himself when he's shooting up. And so, whatever, man.
I mean, that's a fair bet, though.
I can confirm from a cousin of mine who is celebrating several years clean off heroin now. She was addicted for quite a while as well. Yeah, there's a cycle they go through that involves shame and a dire need to fix once the withdrawal starts to kick in. It's an addiction mechanism. It essentially rewires the brain to treat the drug as necessary for living as oxygen, food. And the body goes into a panic state when it's deprived of it. And the way the brain defines deprived is no longer experiencing the symptoms of being high once you've been addicted long enough, depending on the severity of the drug. That state happens a lot quicker with really toxic drugs like crocodile than it does with, say, pot. Because you can go into pot withdrawal, but pot withdrawal is I really just want some more pot. I'm not having as much fun and things. Oh, I'm lazy now.
No, see, it's actually I'm definitely I'm definitely hooked, bro.
Hang the fuck on.
For me, it's I'll do a week sober every now and then. Usually, it's just because I'm too lazy to go buy more, and some of my most productive days, bro. And I don't even know why. I don't even know why. It's just habit. It's honestly, I just smoke inside. Nobody cares. I don't bother nobody. It's just habit, and I recognize how good it is, but then I go out and I'll buy some more. And it's the same way with nicotine, by the way. With the nicotine, I definitely feel that more of the need to fix whenever I am withdrawn.
Yeah, I know with cannabis, the addiction is more psychological than physiological. Although it's something you're intaking into your body, there's going to be a physiological aspect to it, but it's a little closer to addiction to pornography than
I was going to say, I know they said that
rewire your brain to some extent to crave the nicotine.
100%.
Whereas the addiction to pornography essentially rewires reward centers in your brain, not to where you need it. You can go without it for a while, but the moment you want to have it, you indulge because it feels good to do so.
And you do so with that second thought. Yeah.
And then you feel shame afterwards sometimes until you've completely normalized it in your brain, and that's a form of demoralization.
I always feel shame after I beat off.
I started to feel shame when I realized it was interfering in my duties as a dad.
Well, I mean, that's a little bit different.
Yeah, but that's also not uncommon. I guarantee you there is more than one dad in this country, probably a significant amount, maybe not a majority, but a significant amount, who have said to themselves at least once, I will feed my screaming baby after I finish watching this porno.
Oh, probably, most definitely. But that also leads into many questions about marriage in the country that definitely not going to get into because that is going to be a tangent from hell.
Oh, I've got a meme of a video to send that's got citations in the video itself about the dangers of pornography to both the individual and society at large. I love the video.
Well, I know, what is it? Jordan Peterson was talking to. Well, he just did it recently.
He was talking to Ben Shapiro about it. I didn't see the video. I saw the Facebook thumbnail for it, and I pointed out to one of my friends that talking to Ben Shapiro about sex is like talking to Amy Winehouse about sobriety. Although, to be fair, if you could get Amy Winehouse to talk about sobriety, she's been clean 10 years. She'd probably be a pretty good talker about it.
That's fair.
No, Amy, what's
he
it
was
like being off
talking
drugs for 10 years?
Yeah, like Harris doesn't even get the joke. She's
No, I get the
dead.
joke.
She's dead, bro.
She
I get
died
the
June
joke.
2011.
No. I'm trying to figure out who he was talking to, just so then, maybe we get popular. No, I'm kidding.
Jordan Peterson always looks like he wants to cry. I just had to say it on a recorded line.
He was talking to Dr. Warren Farrell. And they basically go over how
I gotta say that thumbnail of Warren Farrell, or Dr. Warren Farrell, show him the respect he deserves. He looks like the kind of dude who's you just told him you did something really stupid and he's 5 seconds from slapping you.
Bro,
yeah.
Really? Are you that
the
fucking
respect
stupid?
that he deserves. Like, I
He's
don't know the guy.
He's a PhD.
So if I
And
got
it- and
a
it's not-
PhD,
and it's not
would you call me doctor?
Depending on what it's in. Yeah, if it's in feminist theory or underwater basket weaving, probably not.
Hold up. If I
know you, Goldberg. You don't deserve much respect.
If I, the ginger beard Jew that I am, fucking all 6'1", 250 pounds of me, if I got a fucking PhD in feminist theory, you would not be impressed.
I'd probably call you Dr. Faggot.
Yeah.
The amount of infiltration I would have to do to achieve that PhD is completely mind-blowing, dude. Like, you want to talk about like dual loyalties and double agents and shit? Like, that's what I'd be doing.
Wouldn't that be subjecting you to brainwashing, though? What happens if you eventually believe it?
Well, see, I told that to Keely, bro.
What happened when I was believing in what happened to me when I was believing progressivism?
You had us, bro.
Oh, yeah, we made fun of you.
Yeah, y'all simultaneously mocked me and provided better sources.
Also,
you cared to stick the fuck out of me.
Dr. Warren Farrell is the author of The Boy Crisis and The Myth of Male Power. So he's what the hell?
He's what the wokists would call an apologist for men.
As if apologetics were
the
a bad
Boy
thing.
Crisis is him.
I mean, dude, the apologists for Stalin are pretty bad people.
Well, it depends on what the apologia is for, because all apologia is defense of a system. The verbal defense, an argumentative defense. It's not apologizing.
I was going to say, The Boy Crisis, like the book, is about the struggles that young men experience. Everyone's like fixated on what young women have to deal with, and they don't bother talking about or even acknowledging the issues that young men experience, despite having, higher suicide rates, less likely to succeed in school, and all this other shit. That's what the book goes into, and that's what him and Dr. Jordan Peterson were talking about. Anywho's.
So we all got to stop jacking off. All right, let's do it.
I'm actually trying to.
Okay.
It's a hard fucking habit to break.
Bro.
No, even then, like, she works night shift, so
and jacking off is not.
I can't fuck her when she's at work.
We're not saying
not.
Okay,
dude, we're all just screaming at each other about how much we're jacking off.
Hey, this is just like Fox News, except more honest.
Look, I'm not a no jack off policy does not mean no nut. All right, he has a wife. He can rail her all he wants. Like nobody. Like that's an appropriate use of your seed.
I went to bed at 8:30 last night. I went to bed at 8:30 last night. Woke up at 10:30 and then got my nut. Just out of nowhere, wanted it, and he gave it up.
See, you two have that option. I don't.
Sucks to fucking suck, bro.
Go back into the dating pool, nerd.
Look, my brother.
Fucking working on it.
My brother, like 12 years ago, told me that I needed to stop jacking off. Now he still tells me whenever we talk, but he told me the first time like 12 years ago, and he said, and he swears by it, that if you go a week without jacking off, that the women will notice. Okay, they will notice and they will become voracious around you.
You know what? I'm going to put this to the test.
Yeah. And also just think about like the gift that they will receive upon allowing you to arrive.
One pump chump. Let's do it.
Yeah, but it's not going to be just one. It's going to be one pump, but then you're going to keep on pumping, right? Because that's what the cock does.
I mean, that's true. That's funny.
Get a painter. Painter.
But all right, I'll put your brother's
Pulling out
theory
the
to the
quitters.
test. I'll give it a week.
You want a mass boost of testosterone, you go all the way in when you finish.
Nice. And you know what? Frankly, I recommend like just you live with your ex-girlfriend, so you don't really have anywhere to take these broads. Like give him more time, and also get your own fucking place.
I know. I'm working on it. It's hard to get my own place when I have 2 dogs.
No girl that you bring home is gonna want to see your ex-girlfriend because they're like, your
well,
standards are that low. Fuck, what does that make
brutal.
me?
Right?
Well,
I don't even
by
know
the
what
way,
your ex looks like, by the way. It's just funny.
They're low. They're pretty low.
What, her tits?
No, God, my standards. Christ.
that's all right, bro. It happens.
What's her name again?
Who?
Never mind. I found her on Facebook.
My goodness. All right.
Your ex.
I mean, she's Jewish. You can't really judge her too hard.
Hey, man, there are
Pictures won't even
beautiful.
load.
There are absolutely beautiful Jewish women. All right.
Where?
Well, I
I'm
mean,
kidding,
like, you know, Keely will eventually one day, I'm sure, because she is so supportive of me, watch this video. I must, of course, start with her.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm surprised the first name that didn't pop to mind wasn't Abigail Shapiro. But
I don't know. I don't know what the fuck she looks like.
I mean,
I
she's
have
got
no
the big
idea what
mommy
she looks
milkers.
like, to be honest.
She's got she's a Orthodox young lady. I'm sure she's very Shemana Gia. It's not my business to know what another man's wife looks like.
Dude, there's a whole section of the alt right that I occasionally interact with on Facebook.
Oh wait, Scarlett
that-
Johansson's Jewish. That's great.
Bullshit.
But yeah, there's a section, a not insignificant section of the vaguely white supremacist, mostly like Western cultural supremacist alt right that I interact with on Facebook through mutual friends that occasionally talks about like obsession with Abigail Shapiro's feet. It's weird.
Huh. Sounds about right.
Oh yeah, and I'm looking at pictures of Danielle, and if she lost some weight, she might be average.
Right? Try telling her that.
I mean, I would, but I value my eardrums.
Very fair.
Oh, and I posted the video I was talking about in our little messenger group chat.
Sweet. So, Harris, are you still gonna move? Are you ever gonna invoke your GI Bill?
Or what exactly?
I don't know anything. It's got limited uses, so just like
No, it's
General
unlimited
question.
now. Well,
What are you
time
talking
frame is
about, bro?
unlimited now.
well, okay, but you can still only use it up to a bachelor's degree, or excuse me, that's not true. That's FAFSA, but it's education or technical school, higher education.
No, I know. Once I move out of state, I'm gonna reapply for SDI, the gunsmithing school, and do that and get a bachelor's in. No, wait, is it a bachelor's?
It's a certificate, probably.
They offer both.
Where's that school at?
It's online. They don't actually do in-person classes, which kind of sucks.
What the
But
fuck? How are you gonna produce anything that's gradable?
right?
Weird, man. Weird.
Yeah, it's online only, which kind of sucks.
Are you meant to have like all your own equipment?
No, they basically mail you everything.
Oh shit.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I have most of the fucking tools and shit anyway, so. It's an Associate of Science in Firearms Technology degree. There we fucking go.
Nice. And then you want to go work for some gun company in Fab Forum or something?
No, I really honestly just really want to do my own thing.
Dude, if I get GDI off the ground, I could have you on as an AK gunsmith.
Hell
Maybe a few
yeah.
years.
Because I do still really want to do, the firearm. Oh, Jesus, fuck, I just pulled my goddamn hammies. Ow. Oh, God.
Cramp.
Oh, God. Anyway, no, I still want to do, like, the firearm training and 2A advocacy. Because, I mean, we've seen it recently with within the past few years, I'm not going to say with just the pandemic, how there's been kind of a cultural shift within the 2A community.
Explain it like I'm 5.
Alright, you know how you had all the fucking boomers who are just like, it's okay if they ban X, Y, and Z. I still got my hunting rifle.
Okay, COVID took care of them, right?
Basically.
Hashtag boomer remover 20.
But they're also the ones who, sit there and make fun of the guys who go to the range and they wear their kit at the range, or they wear, whatever it is they're wearing. And, we were trained with the motto of, you train how you fight. There is nothing wrong with the person at the range wearing his kit, because guess what? When the shit hits the fan, that's what he's going to be wearing, and it's better to train yourself to be useful
to
it.
TLDR for you, the culture has shifted away from the hunting and sporting side to the tactical Instagram operator side.
I mean, basically.
I'm seeing more common proliferation of night vision devices and body armor, but that also could just be confirmation bias, because those are the things I'm into, so I see a lot more of them.
And is that, in your guys' opinion, good or bad for the 2A group, 2A subculture?
It's good. It's absolutely good, because the tactical side is less likely.
Should be.
Yeah, the tactical side is far less likely to yield when it comes to certain restrictions being implemented. The hunting and sporting side are the ones who got us the sporting purposes language in like the Gun Control Act of '68. Okay, that's what got a lot of imports banned. That's what has been commonly used to restrict things like AR-15s. That's why they were rebranded in the '90s as modern sporting rifles. That's why a lot of the legal arguments around guns still focus around, does it have a legitimate sporting use? Like, the Second Amendment doesn't say a damn thing about sporting. It says be necessary to the security.
Which is ridiculous.
Hunting falls under sporting. It's the use of arms in gaining an objective, whether that's winning a competition by shooting clays, shooting steel, or catching a deer, killing waterfowl. Those are all sporting purposes. The Second Amendment says for the security of a free state.
Do you think that a lot of this was proliferated because of Defense Distributed?
No. I actually think the global war on terror probably had more to do with it. More and more veterans who had experience with those firearms in combat, and then coming home and being severely restricted in what they could legally use, despite being quite safe and effective with the more illegal stuff. They tried to build clones.
Well, just having a fucking distinction between what the military can use and what the citizen can use is already.
Well, yeah, that's already
obviously
a violation
not
of the
2A. Yeah.
But
I would be okay with a reasonable restriction on things that you cannot directly account for the damage they cause. So I can understand some restrictions on things that are not direct fire weapons.
Bro, if there is a herd of elk and I have a 320, I'm packing my freezers for years.
Why do that when you could just have a 240? You're gonna have deer soup with a 320.
Yeah, man, it's fucking beautiful, bro. You really think I have enough refrigerators to pack 40 plus deer? Come on, man.
I don't know, man. You got that Jew money.
Bro, if I had a refrigerator,
warehouse.
If I had a freezer that big, there would be investigations for why I have such a freezer. All right,
and they just open them up, and it's just all pizza. Just how'd you order Papa John's frozen pizza?
I built my own Papa John's upstairs, man,
with blackjack and hookers.
Amen.
But I want to get in on that.
Are you still in that Oklahoma?
It's either Oklahoma or Kentucky. I'm stuck between the two. They're both rated, top 10 gun-friendly states?
I don't know. I don't care about that. I care about lists. I just know what my laws are, and I know that they're incredibly free.
But, I mean, it's basically Kentucky, some fucking state I don't give a shit about, and then Oklahoma. So...
according to guns.com, Kentucky is number 7, Oklahoma is number 6.
Yeah, and I would think as a general statement, like, you're not really going to have problems from a political perspective here in Oklahoma, no matter where you are, with a few, very small urban sections. But
Well, I mean, that's how it is. Even like
Well,
basically any fucking city.
obviously
Or
not, dude.
not any city.
Kentucky is a place, man. Kenosha is where that is. Kenosha, Kentucky, right?
No, that's Wisconsin.
Oh
Yeah.
shit. All right, my bad.
Oh, get fucked, retard.
I mean, Rand Paul is from Kentucky.
But
Thomas Massey's from Kentucky, isn't he?
there is a bunch of the same nonsense going on in Kentucky too, right?
Yeah.
Well, most of the nonsense that happens in Kentucky is somewhat directly attributable to their Democrat governor. But
Right,
yeah,
so-
they're also they have constitutional carry in Kentucky. The big thing
Yep.
they got over Indiana. Like the best we could do was slipping into the next year's budget last year, getting rid of mandatory fees for applying for any kind of firearms license. Now the only thing you pay for is the fingerprinting fee, and that's because a third party is the one that conducts it. They're contracted with the state, but it's the people who get the fingerprinting done that pay for it. So that way taxpayers
it's
don't pay for
different.
it.
New Mexico, if you're a veteran, you can bring your DD-214 and instead of having to take like the 36-hour course, you can take like a 4-hour course.
Indiana doesn't require a course at all.
Yeah.
All you have to do is apply and not have a criminal record or a dishonorable discharge that would keep you from owning them in the first place.
New York requires the class, but if I have I have a DD-214, you don't have to take it.
But they will check your voting records, and if they found out you voted for Donald Trump, you will
Fucking
get
probably.
How do they do that? Anyways.
Do which?
Fucking.
How do they check voting records?
Yeah.
Every state has different laws regarding that, like what they can disclose, who can request it, things like that.
Well, even
if there's records, then it's not anonymous. So what the fuck?
Well, yeah.
It's only anonymous to other people around you when you go into that booth. It's how they figure out data on demographics on voting. They get all that data.
I thought that was done entirely
like,
through exit surveys.
That's part of it. That can be part of it, but they can also mass aggregate the data through requests for data. And like generally speaking, most places they withhold personally identifiable information outside of like name.
Well, thank goodness I put other instead of white, and I put other instead of male or female when given the option. And yes, I'm dead serious. I put other when given the option.
I usually mark NA.
Yeah, that too.
But
like the state shouldn't give a fuck if I'm a man or a woman. If
Indiana doesn't do that at all. Indiana has voter ID. All you do is when you go to the poll, you go to your voting precinct. Although this last year they had voting centers and you could go to any of them. You didn't have to go to the one assigned to your precinct. You show your ID. They compare it to the database that the state says are registered for vote, and if everything matches, you vote.
Oh, see, I'm still voting on paper ballots, which I'm sure are serial marked, but I don't ever see them linking my ballot with any particular number on my thing. I never see that happening.
Yeah, same here.
But like, I'm sure that those ballots are all serialized, but they're not linking it to my name in any capacity.
I've never used anything but a digital voting booth.
Yeah, I've never used a digital voting booth.
Yeah, I've never used one.
Wow, Harris, your state's fucked up, obviously. After the close of registration, the Board of Elections publishes a complete list of names and residence addresses of registered voters for each election district and makes these available to public inspection. They can disclose name, residence address, and party enrollment. They restrict it by claiming the information contained within the statewide voter reg list shall not be used for non-election purposes.
Shall it be used for non-election purposes?
Yeah, so if they're using it, it has to be directly related to elections. Like
bro, that's even worse.
Voting, yeah,
that's even worse.
So you're telling me I can't pull a list of voters in New York for Donald Trump and then sell them my new stakes? That's what that would essentially mean. You can't use it for like private marketing purposes.
But you can use it to further increase polarization through targeted voting, get out and vote campaigns. Like that's fucked. That's completely fucked. Blows my mind.
I mean, we already know the general demographics of voting by race, and a lot of those vote efforts target young people and black people, which are the two demographics both most likely to vote Democrat and also least likely to vote generally. So you don't need specific information on that until you see demographic data that says, hey, there was a sudden switch in one group or the other for who they support more often than not.
I have a relatively serious question. Have any of you guys ever been polled before? And yes, there's lots of room for innuendo. Calm down. But have you ever been polled? Like an exit survey? Have you ever been called from a telemarketer to try and get your poll-in information? Like,
Just customer service stuff. Would you like to provide a review of the service you provided? And I'm always
Yeah.
like, no.
but how about for
Oh,
any
darn it.
political think tank or whatever?
Oh, no. Me personally, no.
No.
Me either. I never have, and I don't think I know anybody that has, or at least nobody's ever told me that they have. Not necessarily something to be gonna share, but it always makes me wonder. And then I look at these fucking surveys that they're doing, and they got like population size of like, sample sizes of like 1,800 people, and so like this idea is
Right,
being
what are the odds that you don't know anybody who took that?
right, well, of course, or any similar survey, because there's tons and tons of them that they do every single year. But I've never known anybody. I wonder how many of them are like repeat, like kind of like a Nielsen thing, on your TV. It used to be that they'd hook you up to that, and then they'd track whether or not you're watching the show and all that jazz, so they could develop ratings. So, and apparently that's still a thing. But bro, I don't know.
I know that statistically speaking, like the Trafalgar Group has talked about this before. They're the guys who were getting a lot of the polling in 2020 and 2016 so dead on that they kind of sprung into the spotlight. They've said it's far more difficult to get accurate Republican/conservative polling than Democrat ones because Republicans are far less likely to participate in polls.
That, yeah.
And that a lot of traditional polling still does on foot or phone call outreach. They don't try to get with the time. So a lot of the people they're reaching are older populations who are just less likely to do shit with their time. They have more free time on their hands. They still have landlines. Of course, now they're getting a lot of
who are also home during 9 to 5.
Yeah, now those phone calls are getting a lot more busy signals, and this number has been disconnected. And hello, this is Rosewood Nursing Home. How may I help you?
So,
we're sorry, that patient died of COVID.
My follow-up question is, if you ever did get called and you happen to pick up, or they happen to come by your home, one, would you be surveyed? Would you even go with it?
I guess it would depend on what the survey is about. I don't see why not.
Just a general political survey, like whatever, general questions.
I like
Who did you vote for? What offended you? Whatever. I don't know. So
that's tough.
The follow-up question is, because for me, I would absolutely participate, and I would fucking lie. I would lie through my teeth about every single question, and I would completely, purposefully, knowingly ruin their data set. Yeah, sure, I'm one sample, but I know I'm not the only person lying to them. And so for me, it's like these surveys, they don't even mean anything to me anymore, unless they're like crime data. Crime data, it makes sense because something is
using actual statistics. Yeah, I
something a physical action has manifested itself. Like, as opposed to this, like these votes are anonymous for a reason, so we can lie if we feel the need or want to about them. We're not obligated to tell anybody who we voted for. So I would lie. And so that's why, like, a lot of these studies that come out, I look at their sample sizes and I see like 1,800, 1,500. Sometimes they're even as small as like 300. Now, granted, from a quote statistical end quote perspective, if you have a truly random sample, you really only need 30 people. But I don't think these are truly random samples in any capacity. So does that make me a bad person that I would do that?
It wouldn't be entirely uncommon. I mentioned the Trafalgar Group earlier. They refer to something called the social desirability index, or the social desirability bias, where people calibrate their responses to pollsters one way or another, either because they want to impress the pollster and gain some sense of social good touchy-feelies by telling them what they think the pollster wants to hear, or alternatively, they're hostile to the poller, and so they'll deliberately lie to throw off the data set.
Well, who said I'm going to be hostile? I'm going to be very polite.
Lying is a form of hostility, even if it's polite. A please face the wall is still hostile.
No, that sounds pretty nice to me. Just because somebody's being nice doesn't mean I have to obey.
Well, I think it also boils down to you don't know what that data is going to be used for. So it would be more beneficial for you to lie. than to be honest.
Yeah, I don't really care what it's going to be used for. I don't trust it. I don't trust it from the start.
I mean, well, yeah, right? You don't. That's what I mean, though, is that you don't trust it. Because you're going to sit there and be like, are you going to use this data later down the line against me? You know, are you going to come knock at my door at like fucking 4 a.m. and arrest me for political dissidence?
Oh, come off it. That's some tinfoil hat shit, man. If you think these pollsters are calling to build the lists, those lists are being built automatically with the help of computer algorithms based on your texting and search patterns.
But I mean, in all seriousness, how many people do you think actually, that's their thought process?
They are living in a state of paranoia that even I'm not close to.
Right? This shit would be beautiful, though. But yeah, there are people like that where they don't trust it, so they're gonna lie anyway. Or like Dotson said, not actually respond to it to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't lie, but I'm honest to a fault, to the point where I could completely not just say anything and get in less trouble short term than coming out and saying the whole truth.
That didn't happen in the Army, did it?
No, it's part of what got me in trouble with the Department of Natural Resources last fall. They came to me because of that deer I shot,
the deer.
And they just thought I either shot it outside of legal hunting hours or accidentally claimed the wrong time. And all I had to say was, "Oh shit, what time did I put? 5? Oh fuck, I didn't mean to do that. I shot it at like noon. I'm sorry. I could have done that and escaped any real trouble, but that would require lying. And I don't want my kids to lie. And you'll hear parents say, "I'd rather my kids tell me the truth, and I won't be mad at them, than they lie to me and their friends tell me." Well, if I'm going to say that about my kids, I have to live it myself. When it comes to at least worldview style lifestyle choices. So, rather tell the truth and face the full consequences now than lie, worry about the future consequences on this world and also the consequences to my own conscience.
Well, it's also arguably worse if you get caught lying.
Yeah, because there's always an added penalty for that. Like if you're under oath.
Your situation.
Well, no, if I'd lied to the police then, I wasn't under oath. Like during a casual interview, you have no duty to provide truth to them. Of course, the proper response would have been, "I am not discussing the night with you," and I invoke the fifth. That's according to lawyers whose job is to get people out of trouble, regardless of whether or not they are supposed to be in trouble in the first place.
I think that second part is very, very important. But, like, why pay lawyers to be reactive to the problems that the state is causing for you as an individual? Why not be proactive and prevent the state from ever fucking with you?
Well, to prevent the state from being that kind of problem creator in the first place, it requires a lot more collective work than just hiring good attorneys. Hiring good attorneys just means you have to work more hours at work to pay their bill. On the other hand, creating a state that doesn't infringe on, or that minimizes its infringement on individual rights, requires a culture that wants to create that government in the first place and keep it small, keep it limited, keep it restricted to its specifically necessary spheres of influence. If the culture goes away from that and just wants the touchy-feelies and the freebies, you're not going to have that culture. A man cannot make a culture by himself except in very rare circumstances. The last one I know of that did that well, he was a worthless loser who has way paid for him by a friend who owned factories. And the culture he created became the competing dominant economic, political worldview of the 20th century.
Talking about Soviets?
Talking about
communism.
Yeah, I'm talking about Marx specifically.
I was going to say, fuck, dude, Abraham created a culture all by himself.
I was going to say the last Goldberg to create a culture created one mainly of spearing people.
Fuck yeah, he did, dude. Goldberg, I love that guy.
Actually, technically, Hitler kind of created his own culture.
I mean, Hitler tried a melding of 20th century industrialization and classic Germanic paganism.
I mean, it kind of worked out for him.
I mean, except for the solo he sung in at Kurt Cobain's microphone in the Eagle's Nest at the end of the day.
Dude, his whole life was a lie. All right? Blame the Jews for everything. He was fucking a Jew. All right, his whole life was a lie.
He had a skewed perspective, which you could see in his paintings, where he literally did not know how to align perspective properly.
Yeah, he literally said that the blonde hair, blue eyed is the master race. Well,
Meanwhile,
he had
he wasn't.
brown hair. Yeah, he wasn't even part of the master race. Like, what kind of fucking society elects that kind of? It's wild. It's absolutely wild.
Wouldn't you want the guy pushing your worldview to be the paragon of that worldview? Is that what you're saying?
That is, yeah, that's what I'm suggesting. Especially with like the totalitarianism that he really did evoke. Like, he was like Hitler was everywhere. Hitler was very much like the Kim family in North Korea. Once they got into power, they established it. They cemented it. And I don't understand how an entire group I guess maybe Hitler was like an early simp, right? Like, he was part of the beta race, so he was simping for the alpha race, and like all of the Germans were all like, "Oh, he's so nice, he's simping for me," or whatever. I can't do accents, and so they're like, "He's simping for me. Of course, I'm gonna give him all this power. He sees how valuable I am."
Well, I think it also had to do with, what happened at the end of World War One, and us
dude,
pinning everything on the Germans, and they were like piss poor at that time.
Well, yeah, they were literally printing off mass amounts of money to pay off war reparations because the war reparations didn't stipulate that they be tagged to inflation.
Yeah. So, because, I mean, I agree, he sat there and, appealed to the German people about how they were all, these great people. So
the Ubersmensch.
It kind of goes hand in hand. So you could blame the UK for World War II. Bitches.
Yeah.
Thanks, Neville Chamberlain.
I'm gonna blame Woodrow Wilson. Just a general statement.
Fair enough.
Obligatory fuck Woodrow Wilson posting hours.
Yeah, exactly. He's responsible for the school system we got today, and
he's the foundation of a lot of this fucked up shit. Speaking of fucked up shit, did you guys see the news out of Australia that happened today?
Not today, no.
Several dogs were, according to Spike Cohen, several dogs in Australia were scheduled to be rescued, but local government shot and killed them all to prevent rescue volunteers from collecting them, even though they had COVID-safe collection protocols in place, and there are 0 recent cases of COVID there.
Is it wrong for me to laugh at this?
No, because I was discussing this with my pastor earlier, and I pointed out that this is what happens when you have all the trappings of Western civilization, but you both lack mass ownership of arms and a uniting moral fabric.
Yeah,
I mean, to be fair, they lost to a bunch of birds.
Have you ever fucked with an emu?
Yeah.
You would lose to an emu. We would lose to an emu.
Okay, have you ever read the story?
We ultimately lost to a bunch of goat fuckers, didn't we?
Amen, dude.
And unlike the emu war, it didn't take the M 20 years to lose to the emus.
Yeah, basically, from what I've read of that story, like, it was just like 30 dudes in a Jeep with a 50 cal on it, and they would set up like 100 meters away, and they'd start shooting, and the emus would all run away faster than they could drive in the shitty terrain, and so they'd end up spending days chasing down the emus, only to set up 100 meters, start shooting at them again.
Yeah, they also used trains with mounted machine guns. They still lost.
What I'm reading is the war was conducted under the command of Major Meredith of the 7th Heavy Battery of the Royal Australian Artillery.
There's the truth.
Commanding soldiers Sergeant McMurray and Gunner J. O'Halloran. No, Major GPW Meredith.
I didn't hear the first part.
Dude.
I just heard Meredith.
The 3 of them were armed with 2 Lewis guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah, so 3 dudes with 2 machine guns.
Absolutely fucked.
But
so they're holding down miners and forcibly injecting them. That was a video from a couple days ago in Australia. They're preventing people from just going outside. They're shooting dogs. What the fuck?
Well, who's their biggest trade partner? Do you happen to know the answer to that one?
I'm assuming it's going to be China.
It's China. China is slowly hijacking, taking over,
I was gonna say,
exercising undue
didn't
influence on the
China-
Australian government and culture.
Yeah,
Now-
didn't China just buy? I don't know the name of the island, but it's off the coast of Australia, and they basically banned Australians from going on the island, and the Australians that are on the island can't leave.
Keswick
Well,
Island.
That's fucked.
There we go.
They bought a 99-year lease to take control of Keswick Island.
Dude, how? What the fuck? That's exactly what happened with Hong Kong and Macau, dude. How in the fuck could Australia be that stupid?
Macapitalism, or rather, corporatism.
No,
Because
no,
it's not a free
Capitalism.
market when one party benefits from slavery and genocide and mass forcible exploitation of its people.
It's not a free market when you're talking about governments interacting with each other.
Don't tell that
Oh
to the
yeah, absolutely
corporatists.
not.
They pretend any fucking consent in any contract between two parties, whether or not all people are capable of agreeing to it, is capitalism.
But all right, but is it capitalism that China's kind of muscling its way in to
Well-
Australia to the point that Australia might not even, be Australia?
I mean, how many people live in Australia?
Hang on.
Well, considering the fact
25
Australia isn't real, 0.
25 million people. That's it. Now they have an island. Look at how many people live on. I don't know how big this island is. I'm assuming it's not like enormous. But look at how many people they can fit onto Taiwan. Look at how many people they can fit into a smaller area like Singapore or Hong Kong or Macau.
I mean, that's like a piss in the bucket for the Chinese population. They have
Keswick Island.
1.4 billion people.
Keswick Island has an area of 2 square miles.
Okay. All right. They could
Do you know how
probably
many peasants?
They
you
could
can
probably
fit
fit
on
like
that?
40,000 people, 50,000 people. There was that one city that it was like a city within a city in China, and it had like 40,000 people in it, even though it's just like two apartment complexes.
I can tell you the area of Taiwan is just short of 14,000 square miles.
Yeah. Taiwan. How about
See the
Singapore?
difference.
And by the way, I said 40 or 50,000 people. All right, I'd change my tune the moment you told me it was 2 square miles.
I wasn't listening. I was too busy Googling Taiwan.
Singapore
because I use
is
DuckDuckGo and
281.3 square miles.
181. Nice.
281.
281.
200. Thank you.
And I was going to say, because I use DuckDuckGo and not Google, it didn't say, did you mean the People's Republic of China?
Well, bro, they could just dig down, have a whole subterranean city.
Only so far you can go before you hit water table. That's a hell of a thing to dig through and construct around.
Bro, they're
Taiwan
rebuilding the
could
Silk
do it.
Road. China's rebuilding the Silk Road, so
Through the Belt and Road Initiative, essentially.
yeah. So I pulled this picture, F.A. High quote, figure we could talk about it a little bit. A claim for equality of material position can be met only by a government with totalitarian powers.
Yes, because it would require mass redistribution, and not everyone's willing to give up some arbitrary amount of their earned wealth. Earned or at least received.
So I think that I don't know the rest of the quote, or I mean that's a full sentence, but I don't know what the rest of the context is. But I imagine that he's also going to argue that even with the totalitarian government enforcing a claim for equality of material position, your material position is going to be jack shit compared to what it is now.
Well, it has to be.
For everybody across the board, even the poorest of the poor will suffer under total equality.
I mean, we see that everywhere, but yeah. Well, all right. Let's say you get to keep, I don't fucking know, a lamp, right? And I don't get to keep a lamp. You now have something that I don't have, which makes us unequal,
Right?
right? So in that
so
situation, they have to take everything in order to make everyone equal.
Well, and if they find upon taking everything that they actually don't have enough lamps for everybody, what do they do then with the lamps? Do they distribute them to who they can, or do they just destroy them all outright?
They destroy them all.
Destroy 'em.
Hey man, dude. That's basically Anthem, kind of, in the book.
Actually, that kind of like, that kind of reminds me of some. You know how, a bunch of these new commies, whatever the fuck you want to call them, they're communists. You know how none of them give anything to charity?
Because they perceive themselves as needing the charity, right?
Yeah.
And also, they perceive government as the means to charity.
Do you know how fucking like, let's say what they want comes to pass, right? Do you know how world-shattering that would be for them?
Well, yeah, it would be the true believers that would be the worst victims of it. That's what happens in every other communist dictatorship. They're usually the first ones lined up against the wall and shot.
I think it's funny.
It's funny, but we still lose. It's not
Well,
a
yeah.
particular firing squad when it comes to like all their criticisms of each other that goes more like further and further down the rabbit hole and gets more and more ridiculous. Like the thing I most recently got banned on Facebook from someone claiming that gender affirmation surgery, or what sane people would
Is an
call
abuse.
surgical genital mutilation. No, she wasn't saying it was an abuse. She was saying it was getting the surgery is itself transphobic. I'd have to find the full quote because on the one hand it blew my mind, but also it's a form of extended auto critique that communists like by their design engage in regularly, and it's a way of just making their devotees more and more rabid as they try to appeal more and more to what they consider the norms of communism.
Wait, how is getting the surgery transphobic?
Like I said, you're gonna have to give me a moment to find the original.
So Keely sent me a picture from some of her reading.
Oh God.
Basically, to sum it up, it is 2 paragraphs, which in part are teaching you how to present yourself as a teacher in order to best indoctrinate the kids.
Okay, so the context of my post, this user on Twitter with username Kitty Hammer and Sickle Doggy Symbol North Korean flag and an anime profile picture, of course, said it's transphobic for trans people to want surgery and or hormones because their desires are based on cis sexist ideas of bodies. And then responding to somebody, it said, "How is it a reach? If it's transphobic to consider body parts feminine, then transitioning and altering your body is transphobic."
That sounds like Titania McGruff or whatever her name was.
But if it is, it's a even better troll than Titanium McGrath.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, just throwing in the North Korean flag really just raises some eyebrows for me.
That is an interesting argument. I mean, obviously, the next question would be, are they actually trolling or do they fundamentally believe that?
Well, I mean, even if they do fundamentally believe it, I think that person's on our team. Because the more you can, like right now, the CRT people and all of this woke nonsense, they think that they have it locked down and they understand white cisgender, right? Those are the 2 things you need to concern yourself about. And this person comes along, whether they fundamentally believe it or not, and they're saying, actually, this is why that's wrong, and you need to take it a whole nother step further, which makes it even more ridiculous and makes it even less palatable.
All right, you know what? That's fair. Even if they are trolling, that's fair.
I mean, a tiny bit of a black pill there, but like I think it's for the better in the long run. I don't think it's an accelerationist type thing. I think that there is truth at what the person is saying.
Well,
and it's a reductio ad absurdum. He's just taking it to the next level and showing you why the current perspective is wrong, and why.
Well, yeah, because I don't think it's an accelerant either. Because look at the shift from liberals to leftism, right? And then the progressive push into communism and all that shit. A lot of people aren't okay with that, so they've backtracked.
It's the Mott and Bailey.
So, I guess one way to beat them at their own game is to basically...
It's to occupy the Mott.
I mean, instead of, berating them to the point that they kill themselves. Which is fun regardless, and you should do that. It's to just tell them why their position is wrong and how they can, go past that.
You gotta, yeah,
And
but
just-
you have to phrase it for like
Yeah,
you get
in
to
their
phrase
like
it in their own terms.
in their way.
And like and at the end of the day, I think that the more people that buy into kitty cat, communist, dog, North Korea person, I think the more people that buy into that same exact frame of mind, the more people will be like, "What the fuck are you talking about, bro?"
It's like,
And they're just gonna be completely ignored again.
It's gonna be like, hang the fuck on. But that also doubles back to, not it doubles back to, but like, should these people be ignored, or should they actually be berated to the point that they either change or inevitably end themselves?
No, I think that they are not nearly as stalwart or durable as they think they are. I think that if we ignored them from the start, none of this would come to pass. None of this nonsense would happen. I think if we ignored them from the start, they would have shut the fuck up.
I mean, okay, that's fair, but I'm also looking at it like,
the moment you give them even a little bit of an ear, they're gonna latch onto it.
well, that's like with the flat Earth people, right? They weren't taken seriously, and then out of nowhere, they kind of like became a thing, which is kind of weird in and of itself. But that goes back to: do we allow these people to exist, or?
Yeah, dude, what fucking harm are the flat earthers doing? The only reason I even know about flat Earth is because famous YouTubers debunked flat Earth. All right, I never knew anything about them. I knew passively that they existed. Okay, cool. That's about as far as I knew. And then now,
You're going to tell us your girlfriend's a flat earther?
Guys, the world is not flat. It is deflating, though.
We're fucking shrinking.
A short aside that popped up in my memories the other day on Facebook. I was like, man, the shit I posted 9 years ago. But the whole reason no one hears from is what? Because we marginalize them and continue to do so by mocking them repeatedly.
Well, now we do, but we didn't for a while, and then they blew up, which is kind of fucking.
No, the world pretty consistently did it. The normalization of the internet as a daily part of life bought them a little bit of breathing room, and then when we heard them come back, like, oh no, back into the corner with you. If it was normal, it wouldn't need to be normalized.
Huh. California's opening 5 national gas plants to avoid blackouts. Interesting.
But do you have to be vaccinated to work there?
Probably. It just showed up. But even like, this even goes into like the whole climate, catastrophist people. Global warming's the worst thing ever. We're going to be underwater and all that other shit.
I'm still reading about the predictions of mass global cooling when I was a child.
Well,
back and forth,
because
bro.
it's the whatever gets us what we want agenda.
I mean, there's
It's
more
the
evidence
pragmatic
of a
agenda.
global. There's more evidence for a global cooling than there is for a global warming, which is kind of funny. But you got all these people who are just like, "Yep, you're gonna be fucking underwater." Meanwhile, they're the ones who buy like oceanfront properties.
Don't you know there are tax incentives to buying oceanfront property, along with the subsidization of the insurance?
I did not know that. That's really gross.
I'm going to be honest. That's actually something I learned thanks to John Oliver, back before he became super obsessed with Trump, and was actually interesting to watch. Because he always had a good way of addressing his points, and he did really good research, and he had good jokes.
You're just looking for that fix, bro. You're just looking for that fix.
Listen, no, it's just that after all that, 9 times out of 10, his conclusion was completely 180 from what would actually serve his principles, if they were the principles he was claiming he had.
And it's something that's interesting because for most of my life, at the very least since I was a younger person, like 18, 17, I have realized that like the two political parties, for the most part, they see the same exact problems. They just have a completely polar opposite conceptions on how to resolve said problem.
They can agree on one thing, though, that it should be the state doing the resolution. It seems like more often than not. It's just that the Democrats want the state to be the state, whereas the Republicans want the state to be the corporations.
I
And
was
they
going to
both
say,
suck.
with the Democrats, they actually enforce their will, whereas Republicans concede it.
No, Republicans enforce their will. It's just their will is not the will of their voters. Their will is the will of their corporate masters. That's why you see them fighting hard and hard and hard for corporate tax cuts and corporate exemptions and corporate protections. But protecting their voters, I don't care about that. Voters don't
like,
fund my
that's-
campaign.
But to be fair, I mean, the Democrats aren't any better. I mean, most of them have their hands in the pockets of the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, they all have corporate overlords. And when it comes to like tax cuts for big business, I'm all for that. Even though I'd rather there be no taxes. I mean, at the end of the day, like these tax cuts, I'm going to support them no matter what because fundamentally they should lower the revenue of the state, and that's very important to me. It's not important to the state. I know the state doesn't give a shit.
Some of the data I've seen shows that some tax cuts increase the revenue of the state because it increases the tax base. But I was going to say the left seems more supportive of corporations nowadays because those corporations are now run by leftists. A lot of them are true believers, or at the very least, they're super cynical and they see the way the culture is going and they go, "Shit, if we still want to have a customer base, we have to appeal to them."
So I wonder if they're true believers or if they've only ever been taught one way.
I would say the ones that have more influence in the culture are true believers. Companies like Coca-Cola, Nike. I mean, you don't have a racial sensitivity training seminar for your employees titled "Be Less White" because you're cynical and just trying to make a buck.
Well, that also goes back to like
there would be ways for them to be cynical and present that in a way that's less confrontational. Because an argument like that at the very front seems deliberately designed to divide.
How many people do you think are going to stop drinking Coke because of that campaign?
I think Coca-Cola lost a lot of money from that. Actually, let me check.
No, I think they lost. They got a lot of backlash from their investors.
Because I'm thinking, they've already got a captive audience and a majority of people, but maybe there's one demographic that say prefers to drink like grape juice or something like that, and maybe Coke wants to capture some of that audience, and so they're going to pander to that audience in a form of soft racism.
But this also goes back to what I said earlier. Are they actually willing to die for those beliefs?
I think that they're willing to pull the trigger for those beliefs, and that's what's way more important to me.
It's not necessarily will they die for those beliefs, will they act for those beliefs?
That's what I mean.
Yeah, Ethan's right on that, because there's a lot of beliefs I have that I'm not willing necessarily to die for because they're not principles.
And like I got some friends who's like, they're very much like me politically, but their entire family is rabid left wingers. And he tells me all the time when he gets in arguments with them that he just tells them like, oh, so ultimately like you're okay with all these people dying, so you're okay with me dying. And like his family's just like, oh no, dude, you're totally redeemable, but all the rest of these people, they're not redeemable at all. And it's just like ultimately what the point that he needs to get across to them, in my opinion, is he needs to tell his family, like, look, you're not just willing to let me die. You're willing to pull the trigger when the time comes for you to pull the trigger. And I think that that's something that a lot of these people on the left, they need to like actually understand that, because I think that they live in this fantasy where they believe they will never have to pull a trigger, but that's wrong. We recognize that. And even if it is right, even if they never do have to pull the trigger, just their recognition that they are rabid enough to be willing to pull the trigger, it really like it's going to rattle a lot of people when they have that realization. It's just most people don't think that deeply into themselves.
Well, it also goes a little bit further, as they might not actually pull the trigger themselves, but they might actually, they might be okay with it at the end of the day, which is just as bad as pulling it yourself.
So how did Coke do? Lord
Global sales fell 28% in the second quarter of 2020, from $10 billion to $7.15 billion. They blamed the pandemic, which shut down movie theaters and bars.
Sure.
And I'll give them some for that. But I've also anecdotally witnessed more people, since they're staying at home more, buying a lot more soda. I mean, I know y'all went grocery shopping at some point in 2020 and saw mass temporary shortages because people were just panic buying.
Nope.
Not a soda. I didn't say anything
Nope.
wrong with soda.
Pretty much everything in my local
Just
Walmart
ordered my
was
food
sold out,
online.
except for like the impossible section. Anything that was soy or vegan, tofu, whatever, did not sell very well because it's the Midwest.
Right.
Well, no, it's not even that. It's the Midwest. That shit doesn't last long. No one's gonna fucking buy that garbage. Like, fuck, when you're locking your house, you want goddamn potato chips. You don't want fucking tasteless
Bro, I
tofu.
want steak when I'm locked in my house. Fuck you talking
Or
about.
that, but
I can't
regardless,
afford
you
it
still
because it's
don't
like
want
$36 a pound.
What the fuck?
So that's some nice steak.
I don't remember. I was gonna buy ribeye for a meal I was making for when my pastor came over, and then I actually saw the ribeye, and it was like $18 for the one ribeye, and I was like, no, fuck no.
Yeah, I just
You
buy
get-
truck.
You
Truck
get chuck
business is
Go
cheap.
round.
hunt your own
Yeah, you
cow.
get chuck round.
Aren't there cow farms by you? Just go.
Yeah, there
out
are.
and kill a cow.
Kill a cow. That's
No,
called
they-
stealing.
They
That's called
they
poaching.
I had the same thought, Harris, when I came out to Oklahoma, but it turns out they want you to buy like at least half of the cow.
Yeah, that was something my pastor
Oh, no,
actually
no,
brought
no.
up. We were talking about filling the freezer full of
fundamentally-
meat, and he said that him and a group of people once a year go in on a whole cow and they split the meat between them.
Yeah, no, I'm telling you to go to that farm and shoot the cow, and then take the cow.
Okay, that is
Here's what'll
stealing.
happen.
That
Here's
is
what'll
stealing,
happen.
yes,
I don't have I don't have
That
a
is
suppressor. I don't have a suppressor. I don't have anything subsonic that would reduce the signature enough that I could get away with it. Nor are any of my vehicles especially equipped to harvest a cow or take it away from where I killed it. So I shoot the cow, a farmer comes outside and shoots me, and I bet the farmer who's been hunting most of his life is more accurate than I am.
The shame. The shame.
I don't know, man. 40 years of shooting experience over 7 years of occasional shooting experience.
Yeah, it's so true. That's definitely something that people do not understand about the Army.
Oh, you were in the Army? I bet you're like an expert sniper and shit, dude. We shot twice a year. You shot at most 50 rounds.
All right,
if you
I
were
think
good.
I shot.
And it took you fucking.
more-
It took you 72 hours to shoot those 50 rounds.
And it wasn't you shooting most of that time. You would go zero real quick. Like, oh, I did that in 25 rounds. Okay, now you do your 40 for qual. And now you're waiting in a fucking building with no beds and no insulation for the next 2 days. Bored out of your mind and pulling guard.
For no reason. No reason pulling guard.
Yep.
Like you're in a secure location. There's no reason to pull guard. Yeah, the whole thing. It's all dumb as shit, man. And we wonder why they went woke. Like obviously they never had any genuine capacity. They just had a shit ton of money and a shit ton of buddies, and you can make a lot of that. But it could have been so much more.
Well, that also goes back to why I want to get into like the tactical training aspect, because you know what? I'd rather have.
A skill for when
No,
everything goes bad.
Well, yeah, right. Like the military right now is a fucking joke. Like there is no question about it. The wokeism has basically destroyed the armed forces to its core. So it's better to have civilians who are as trained, or not as trained, better trained than the military, where if, God forbid, some shit pops off, you at least have people who are competent enough to be able to do something about it. Or, you know, we slowly shift towards communism.
I mean, it's gonna happen, obviously, and in time it will fall apart, and we'll start again. Be all right.
Nothing
Well,
more
yeah.
natural than entropy. Nothing escapes it.
And what is communism's like main fantasy goal is to escape entropy, and that's ultimately what will cause it to fail, because it's trying to fight against nature, which is a well established concept within communism, and which is why I don't understand why all these fucking environmentalists are communists, because communists put up fucking factories, man. Like holy shit. What happened to the RLC? The RLC is basically gone from the map because of communism.
Isn't that the one that
It's
Or I
to
might be thinking of a different one.
it's to the east of the Black Sea and east of the Caspian Sea and the Aral Sea. By like
Yeah, that's
2015,
that the
it,
Soviets shifted. What is
Yeah,
it? They like
they,
changed the flow of the water or whatever.
yeah, they were doing
Yeah.
it for agricultural
cotton,
reasons.
just cotton. They were trying to compete against American denim, basically. American cotton.
The eastern basin of the Aral Sea is now a desert called the Aral Cum Desert,
Nice. Yeah,
spelled Aralkum.
it's like tragic, right? That was a huge body of water, and now it's just gone.
It was big enough to be called a sea. It was significant.
Disappeared because of communism. So, like, of course, we're gonna end up in communism. Whatever, man. I'm gonna have the kids. They're gonna have the kids. They're gonna have the kids. And one day down the line, there's gonna be a little Goldberg who's gonna be fucking free. All right, and I'm gonna be happy about it. I'm gonna be dead, but I'm gonna be happy about it.
I mean, the way I view it is that we should fight it now before our children have to deal with it.
Well, I think the problem is that whether they realize it or not, willing or unwilling, knowledgeable or unknowledgeable, I think that a vast majority of our politicians are, in one way or the other, in the hands of China. I think that China is playing off of this woke nonsense perfectly. I think that they are doing a fantastic job. I do worry a little less about communism and a little bit more about racial cleansing once China really takes over the nation, takes over the world. But that's probably like 7 or 8 generations down the road.
Unless we nuke them first. No, I'm kidding.
Nuke
But no,
it from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
So it's gonna happen probably.
I agree.
That or we escape the Earth and we start colonizing other places in earnest.
I don't think we're ever gonna be able to hit that mark. Maybe Mars in maybe the next 10 years, give or take.
Well, I mean, like in the scale that it needs to happen, I don't know, man. I kind of imagine that like there's gonna be one of two things. One, we're gonna have a super successful start of the colonization of Mars. So then they're going to go to the next scale up and they're going to immediately start working that, which is going to be go to the next solar system, which is there's lots of sci-fi written about that idea.
Well, I mean, right now we're sort of looking at the start of a new space race because us and China want to get to the moon and set up a mining operation on the moon.
I understood there was basically nothing of worth on the moon.
I mean, that's what we were told, but apparently that's what they want to do. On top of set up like observation posts and shit like that on it, which kind of makes you wonder what they're observing for. But whatever. But yeah, we're trying to compete for that. Meanwhile, NASA literally sits there and goes, "Yeah, we lost all the data from the 60s, so we can't go back to the moon." And it's like, what? What do you mean you fucking lost it?
And it's funny because I guarantee you that in fucking undergraduate classes across the country, in some of the upper division undergraduate classes, I guarantee you that there are students who are doing the math and figuring out all of this stuff that NASA claims to have lost.
Right? Or even look at Elon Musk. He was able to make a rocket that vertically takes off and lands. All right, NASA, you have.
Well, I think the truth is that ultimately NASA's budget went to Elon Musk.
Well, now it did.
Which is a problem in and of itself, but
I mean, at least he's spending it. But I agree. It should be his own personal endeavor, not the taxpayers.
Yeah, I mean, right now his all of his motivation is figuring out the best way to deliver from the ground to the ISS. But like that's not colony stuff in any capacity. And didn't he put out the you can buy a ticket for the colonization of Mars? When was the date for that? Or was there a date for that?
I don't know if there was a date. I know you were able to buy a ticket, but I don't know about a date. I think Dodson might know more on that.
What date are we looking for?
Whether or not Elon Musk put a date on the first settlers on Mars, the people who bought the tickets.
Look it up now.
He was just typing off a firestorm in Discord too.
It was about what's on the moon that's worth harvesting. Calcium silicates, calcium oxides, pure calcium for use in electronics in atmosphere-free environments, because it's a really good conductor. Aluminum in the form of anarchites, which is a really high-density aluminum sedimentary formation, and titanium oxides.
Nice. And Japan just landed on that asteroid. Israel also landed on an asteroid. I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later. I think we're going to, if not go to other planets, I think that we're going to eventually colonize Leo.
Elon Musk proposed a potential price point anywhere from $500 to even below $100,000, to the point where fairly affluent families could sell their assets here on Earth and use that money to get to Mars.
So the Jews are going to colonize.
The Jews are going to set up the first galactic bank, bro. The Jews are going to be the ones who get the credit system
I must have
going.
been talking with Jared about this, but yeah, I like, you know, all these sci-fi movies. They put like all these different various Christian denominations, and then they'll put like an odd, maybe some Muslim, maybe some Buddhist, maybe some Confucians, but then they'll always include like one like rare religion, right? So the show I'm thinking of, they put Mormons in, right? But I think the truth
You're thinking
is,
of Starship Troopers, aren't you?
well, Starship Troopers definitely does do that. That is hilarious.
They do it with the literal Mormons. The
fundamental, the FDL,
the Joseph Smith camp that got slaughtered by the bugger, but not the bugger.
I was thinking of a Netflix show that was really weird, but they brought.
See, when I think of religious groups in space, I can't think of anything but the quote-unquote preview for History of the World Part 2 at the end of Part 1, which ended with Jews in space.
Yeah, that's what I think is gonna. I think for sure that there are gonna be tons and tons of Jews. They're gonna organize their own ship. They're gonna fucking build that shit, and they're gonna get. It's probably not
have a yarmulke on it.
Probably not, and it probably won't even. It probably won't even launch from.
It'll probably just have like the yarmulke built into the space helmet.
Every Jew on board will be wearing a yarmulke, so it'll have a collective yarmulke. But no, I fully expect that they will do their own thing, and it won't. I don't even think it'll launch from Israel. I think it'll launch from America, because I think it'll be mostly American Jews doing it.
Probably. And
I do know that they have already talked about. There's jokes already in this space. So you got an imam, a priest, and a rabbi go up into space, and it goes around, it orbits a couple times, and they go back down, they land. And they all get asked like, oh, what did you think of space? And mom says, oh, it was so beautiful. I saw this golden marble. Well, I guess the mom doesn't really work, but Confucianism instead of an imam, a Confucius guy. He's like, oh, I saw this thing and I really felt the Zen or whatever the fuck Confucians believe. And then the priest was like, oh, I totally saw. I saw this blue marble, but like overlaid of it was Jesus on a cross, and it was so beautiful. And then they asked the rabbi, and the rabbi says, like, morning, night, I couldn't figure out, what time it was, so I was constantly trying to figure out if I had to be praying or not, because Jews have 3 daily prayers, like Islam has 5. Anyways, so that's a joke told me by a rabbi. I'm a terrible joke teller, so take it with a grain of salt. But there's already jokes in this space about Jews in space.
Fair enough. All right. I actually have to get going.
Yeah, this episode's been going for about 2 hours. Been a good run.
2:10. All right, so thank you for joining us. We'll come back next week.
Of course. Maybe we'll have a topic to talk about.
More